Skeptic. He calls out SJWs. He's not actually doing a trigger warning, but he does. And that clip alone is basically all I needed to refute you. I accuse you of not being a strong enough critic of religion, and when it comes time for you to criticize religious people, you give them a fucking trigger warning. Does this not seem comical to you?
I see religion as a way for people who can't accept reality to live with the concept of mortality. Being a self-aware meat robot is a very scary experience. By looking at how many people are religious on the planet, most people are incapable of accepting the concept that in the end of life is just nothingness and abyss. That's something our brains can't just naturally wrap around. And even I don't have a proper understanding of what exactly this means. I don't really fully grasp the concept of nothingness after death. This is just a way for these people to come to grips with reality. Let them have this. It's harmless, mostly. Yes, there are bad religions. There are good ones, and there are good parts of the bad ones.
And it's just the most tired excuse making. And nothing but an emotional argument. These people can't cope with death, therefore accept religion. No. How about we find a better way to cope with death? One that's less dogmatic. One that doesn't have horribly bigoted and violent doctrines. That should be the response, right? You can make this argument about anyone. You find a group of people who are wrong. They need this to cope. The SJWs, they need their rhetoric to cope with the world. Some feminist who feels like she has a raw deal at the beginning of life. She really just needs a patriarchy to blame everything on. Come on, guys. Stop being so militant. Stop being so mean. Let her have this. God, what is it with you critics critiquing and shit? How fucking wonderful is that? It's a community where brainwashed idiots gather to worship creatures from the beyond.
Wow, that was edgy as fuck. Looking from the outside in, religion seems silly, the beliefs seem silly. But put yourself in their shoes. You seem completely incapable of understanding how other people think. And this is what makes you a bad skeptic. You need to be able to put yourself in their shoes, understand their own version of logic, so you can understand what their arguments are, so you can better dismantle their arguments. How will you ever convince a Christian to stop being a Christian and become an atheist if you can't even talk to them like they're a fucking human being?
Okay, once again, not trying to be edgy, refusing to sugarcoat the harsh reality. I don't really personally care about their own version of logic because it's not logical. And once again, I have no expectations of changing anyone's mind on any subject. People think what they think. I am only here to call out bad ideas. I'll make my arguments as best I can, but ultimately it's in their hands. And put myself in their shoes, I am formerly religious. I know what it's like to think this way. And it's a terrible way of thinking. It's unacceptable and needs to be called out in a strong way. Playing this nicey nice game will get the atheist movement absolutely nowhere. People who pioneered the atheist movement, i.e. the Four Horsemen and all them, they knew this. They knew that they needed to call out religion and religious people in a loud and vocal way. Making excuses and apologetics for this group of people at all turns does nothing but signal your weakness and submission to them. They sense that fear and they exploit it at every turn. Let's just paint it like it's this nice, cuddly thing.
It's most definitely not what I did. What I said was there are aspects that are not all bad.
And that's what I'm saying. Why do you feel the need to make those excuses? Why do you feel the need to play these apologetics? Why do you feel the need to say, religion isn't all bad? Yeah, I get that it's mostly bad. I get that it's built on a series of lies. I get that it's fundamentally untrue and obviously damaging to societies based on what we see throughout human history. But here's some good parts. If anyone ever did that with any one specific religion, let's say Islam for example, I would immediately call them an Islamic apologist. And the same can be said here if we're talking about religion in general. You are an atheist who happens to be a religious apologist. Synonymous with porch atheist, in case you're still confused about that. In fact, at this point, there's plenty of atheist communities. The idea of a church-run community is obsolete and fucking worthless.
What? Atheist communities exist, therefore no church communities need to exist. You know, not everybody that's an atheist belongs to an atheist community. In fact, there are some atheists that belong to Christian communities, to fucking music communities, and cartooning communities.
And he really just doesn't even get the point I'm trying to get at there. If you are going to go out of your way to bring up community as a positive point of religion, it is entirely fair for me to say, well, guess what? There are plenty of atheist communities. We don't need to be religious to have a community. We don't need to even necessarily be part of a religious community to be in a community, even if we were atheists. That's why I find bringing up community as a positive apologetic for religion to be silly. That's why it makes no goddamn sense. And I really failed to see how I couldn't have explained that any more clearly.
And a lot of Western morality is still very much based on Christian morality.
Okay, and that's just bullshit. If anything, any moral progress in America has been in spite of Christianity.
Yes, you can't deny that it progressed from a standpoint of Christianity and evolved from that point. Christianity also evolved in its own way to better integrate into modern society. But in the same way, modern society, our values system, our morality system, our idea of what is right and wrong, that originates from European Christianity. To dismiss that reality is to ignore our own history.
And this is just the most tired Christian apologetic I have ever heard. If we're talking about Western civilization, Christianity wasn't even there at the start. We have morality that is carried over from pre-Christian times, from times before the religions of the Middle East affected Europe. And did Christianity evolve? Of course it did. Obviously. Obviously, dudes. But that's not really the point. You're trying to say that our entire moral system is based on Christianity, when it far predates that. Our moral system did not evolve within the last 2,000 years alone. There's been a lot culminating up to that point. And it makes you look really bad when you're this desperate to harness us to Christianity, going as far to suggest that it's in the fabric of our society and how could we really do without it? It's really at the core of all things. It's the core of our moral system, or at least the origins, when that isn't even true. And I thought people in the atheist community had spent enough time debunking this. I would hope we were not still using the same moral compass as those fucking primitives.
No, we're not. But what do you mean by primitives? Do you mean the original Christians, the old ones? Because, again, they have evolved also. You're nitpicking the language I'm using instead of actually addressing what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying!
Oh, and that's so fucking rich. Did that hurt your feelings, Greg? It's not like you have spent this entire video nitpicking what I said, nitpicking my word choice, and mischaracterizing me. And a lot of this can be boiled down to miscommunication. But it is worth pointing out when you go out of your way to say, these are our origins. And what people am I talking about? I'm talking about people who ruled their societies theocratically. Specifically Christians. Not just the original Christians. Any Christian society throughout history who has had theocratic elements within their governments. It's worth pointing out that I'm against that. I'm against that happening in the first place, and I'm against a furtherance of that.
And a lot of Western morality is still very much based on Christian morality. But the church is still kind of regressive.
Yes, an institution that only exists to facilitate the worship of sky creatures is regressive. Oh, I'm sorry, it's kinda regressive. I mean, it's mostly alright, but, sometimes it's a little bit much, guys.
I'm sorry, sometimes I get caught up pondering my own existence, thinking about the cyclical nature of society and of civilizations, and I wonder, will it be my turn in my lifetime? What's going to happen next? I stand up and I stare into the abyss and I scream, what am I? What am I doing here? What will happen when I die? What's my purpose? And I hope, and I wonder, will I at least hear my echo come back to me? And I sit and I wait and I hear nothing, and it makes me fall into a deep, crippling depression, and I wonder, what will happen when I die? What is the point of all this? Why am I even here? Oh, but yeah, by all means, explain to me why a bunch of people who believe in a Sky Daddy are the worst thing that ever existed.
The most pathetic appeal to emotion and lack of skepticism I think I have ever seen from a YouTube skeptic. Put big quotes around that. He's such a skeptic, he needs to overcompensate and put it in his username. In that clip, I was not even saying that believers were the worst thing in the world, as you have so carelessly slandered me as saying. I was pointing out how absurd it was for you to claim that the church was still kinda regressive. The entire concept behind it is regressive. I condemned the church, the organization, but because you're such a social justice freak, you immediately jump to defend the marginalized believers who apparently I'm being too militant against. And you go into this sniveling, oh, it's their personal experience story. They're scared of death. How can we blame them? Of course we can blame them. I thought that you as a skeptic were looking for evidence whether or not something is true. Notice how much the goalposts move when you're playing these games of identity politics? What a fucking joke. This is one of the most popular atheists on YouTube. Maybe I've set my expectations too high. That it might be me. I might be the asshole here.
I'm not going to say it.
I'm only an asshole to easily triggered religious apologists like Greg and all of his laughable scumbag followers. But what I'm asking for is not hard. I am asking for clarity. I am asking for an understanding that religion is not a good idea for anyone to hold, for any reason.
Excuse me, but I want clarity. You just said there are no atheists that want religion to be abolished, and yet you've done nothing but rail against religion and religious people. Which is it? Is religion all bad and needs to end? Or is religion all good and we need to keep it? Or do you think that there's some sort of funny middle ground, like maybe religion's not all bad? Perhaps? Or do you just want it to stay so you can stand on your soapbox and talk down to them like they're all inferior to you and all of their ideas are bad? What kind of sick game is this? They're all terrible people. Oh, but we don't want to end their fucking belief system. We just want to say how bad they are all the time.
And this goes back to Greg's very lazy mischaracterizing of me. I'm very obviously